it's GB News Breakfast, 8:36 with poor Ellie and Paul.
Yeah. Have to think about that. Yeah. Time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is political strategist and former advisor to Tony Blair, John McTiernan, and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. And John, we're going to start with you. And this is a headline in the Mail. Rishi Sunak to appoint anti-woke czar.
No, it's an anti-woke czar, and it's a crackdown on left-wing bishops.
No.
And the Tory party used to be the Church of England's party. I mean, the Church of England were the Tory party at prayer. And now we have the wrong word, isn't it? A jihad against left-wing bishops. It seems that Rishi Sunak's got a very thin skin. He doesn't like being criticised. And when bishops disagree with him on Rwanda or on other policies, rather than having an argument with them or just accepting that it's a country in which you have right to free speech, he wants to appoint some more conservative-leaning bishops. And this whole thing about a free speech czar for universities, I just don't get why the government are so concerned to fight culture wars. So it's the 21st century, people's views are changing, young people have different views from older people, get real.
So just outline for us again, I remember Tony Bell talked about drug czars. When they talk about czars, what do czars do?
Yeah, so a czar, it's funny, isn't it?
It's a Russian term.
It's a Russian term for an emperor. Another word might be Kaiser, that you'd use, or Caesar. But a czar is somebody brought into government from outside who's given the authority of government to go and look into an issue if it's a big problem. So, a drug czar looks at the drug issues, an antisocial behaviour czar looks at the problems with antisocial behaviour. In this case, it's an anti-woke czar. So it's as if the country hasn't got bigger issues.
Yeah, and he's specifically going to go after left-wing bishops, not right-wing bishops.
No, not
any other kinds of bishops.
Right-wing bishops are fine.
So he's going to
point this. The bishop who's quoted in this article repeatedly is somebody who's withdrawn from 3 different appointments because, as a vicar, he has opposed women as bishops and women as priests. Right. So it's like, well, that's where the Church of England is going, is women priests, that's accepted, women bishops, that's accepted. And so to have somebody in the hierarchy of the church who's against that seems, well... Yeah. But that's the side that Rishi Sunak wants to back, so I just don't know. Yeah. I don't know...
Has the salary been given yet?
It hasn't, actually. That's a good point.
And do you wonder what the job specification for that is and where on earth they'd post it? I mean, clearly he's got someone in the frame for it that he wants.
They've already chosen a professor from Cambridge, so just...
have they?
So
okay.
Don't worry, no need to apply.
Okay.
Claire, let's go to you, shall we? Yeah. Nicola Sturgeon, we've got 2 stories on her, one in the Telegraph, one in the Times. Yeah. Let's start with the Telegraph, shall we?
Well, I'm only bringing these stories because, of course, the Prime Minister was up in Inverness meeting Nicola Sturgeon, and it's not covered much in the papers. And I feel to give GBNEWS its breadth of the country, then we have to talk about it.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to explain it. It's good to hear. It's good to hear what's happening in Scotland.
Yeah. Well, look, Nicola Sturgeon ready for court scrap if legislation blocked by Rishi. This could be a number of things, but it's actually with regards to her self-ID, gender identification. Sturgeon really could scrap if Sunak blocks new legislation. Nicola Sturgeon is preparing for a legal fight to save her gender reforms if they're blocked by Downing Street. And of course, this is the gender reforms that were put to the Scottish Parliament, voted on, and won with a majority for children as young as 16 to self-ID without the ability of their parents' knowledge or, in fact, anyone's knowledge they can do it. And anyone over the age of 16 can do it within 6 months. So it's really helping the trans community, but I would say at the expense of women's safe spaces and indeed society as a norm. I think it would deeply, deeply disconnect if this was to go through. So what Rishi Sunak has said, and what indeed he can do, the Westminster can veto this. It's never been done before, and I think it's by Section 35
of the Scotland
Act.
Yeah.
And that would shimmy it and jimmy it, in fact, around. But then, as well as that, we've now got Sturgeon in a muddle as she backs away from the referendum, which, of course, the Supreme Court ruled against her having another referendum for Scottish independence. In the summer, she was very clear before this ruling came out, and the leader of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, the first Scottish minister, said, "No, I'm going to fight it tooth and nail. We are going to get our independence. This is what she says of the view of the people of Scotland. This is what she has been entitled to do, and she's going to do it." However, the Supreme Court, rightly in my view, came and said, "Look, no, it's not. It will not be legitimate."
She also then she said, "Oh, look, we can make the next general election a referendum,
a de facto one,
a de facto referendum," and it's that she's backed away from. So she must have been reading the polls, because I think she's realised that Labour are going to do so well in Scotland that it'll be very hard for her to claim that.
Well, Labour are going to put the stymie in Scottish nationalists getting their independence.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, ironically, and that's what the view is. If she doesn't have enough fraction in her own party, which is also beginning to feel, because of course she can't hold the general election in 2024 as a de facto referendum because it's not legitimate, and it's not legitimate because Westminster are not admitting it.
But
acknowledging it.
The best way to put a spoke in all this is for the current government or the next government to appoint Nicola Sturgeon to a pointless and ineffective international role with the United Nations.
Right, okay.
Let's elevate her away from Scotland.
Okay.
Because she clearly wants to get away. She clearly needs an exit plan. Time for Westminster to help her with it.
Okay, I saw an interview with Rishi Sunak that was doing the rounds with the STV's political editor. It's a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
Literally 2 minutes where he just keeps asking him, would you accept that the next election will be a de facto referendum on independence? And he just kept saying, I'm focusing on the priorities, etc., etc.
Oh, I just wish that...
They were just... But why didn't he just say... I don't understand why he didn't just say, I wouldn't.
I know, I don't understand that either, but also I don't understand, given that as well, why TV outputs like BBC Scotland and STV don't hold the SNP to the same scrutiny as Colin attempted to do to Rishi Sunak. They don't. They seem to get away with it all the time.
Well, yeah, that's another issue, but I'm just wondering why Rishi Sunak didn't say, I don't accept that the election will be a referendum. Why didn't he just say...
Very inexperienced
politician.
Prime Minister, very experienced politician. He's actually not had a lot of exposure to, the way you come up through the ranks and you get on different programmes, you learn actually how bad it looks if you don't answer a question. And a bit of him is like, I'm the Prime Minister. It's your privilege to ask me a question. Don't keep asking me the same question.
What would you advise him, John?
I'd advise to be more personal, like talk from your heart, talk like yourself. You're a rich man. You're married well. Your parents worked hard for you. Don't deny all that. Be aspirational, and also just then go when you get asked that question. You go, it's ridiculous to say a general election is the same as a referendum. Of course, I wouldn't accept it.
No, so it was just strange. It's like he kept going back to his pre-programmed answers. I'm focusing on this.
Yeah, one feels that he's and he maybe he's thinking, look, it'll just get cut. That no TV station will run all these answers. I mean, we've seen people try and do that before, but it's news if you won't actually answer a direct question.
John, let's stay with you, shall we? Something totally different now. In The Sun, 1 in 3 people cannot afford a night out at the pub due to higher cost of living.
Yeah, well, we know, don't we, from lots of other stories that pubs are facing a crisis because the cost of beer is going up, because the cost of energy to keep open, because the cost of the food that they provide. And now we've got this other pressure that people can't afford to even go to the pub. And that is the basic right of a British person to be able to relax with a pint of beer or a glass of wine at the end of the day in a pub. And that kind of tells you something really big is going on. It brings to life the cost of living. It's abstract when it's what inflation is and what other things are. Other prices are going, but this is something which people traditionally have done for centuries in Britain. Go to the pub and you're not able to do it. Now, what's going to happen? Bad for pubs. I also think this is bad for the government because it's about the feel-good factor. This is the feel-good factor turning into a feel-bad factor.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
Yeah, and the hospitality industry is suffering already. They lost £2.5 billion between June and I think the start of this year, partly because of the strikes, partly because...
Still not recovered. Terrible Christmas, because normally Christmas parties are a big deal, but people were cancelling Christmas parties left, right and centre because you couldn't guarantee to get in and out.
Yeah, because of the rail strikes and the bus strikes. And 35% of the hospitality industry's profits for the year is taken over the Christmas period.
Yeah, very difficult.
Plus dry January. There's lots of us doing dry January, so that's having an impact as well.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Very, very difficult. Very difficult. Maybe amend your night out at the pub. Have less drinks. Still go to the pub, but have less drinks. cut back on the pub snacks.
But then what you're doing is if you have fewer drinks, you're costing the pub to have the heating on, and you're not paying for it by buying your pints.
That's it. Well, no, I'm still saying buy your pints, just have less pints.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Still get your rounds in.
Still get your rounds in.
Or coffees.
Don't be Boris.
Don't be Boris, go without your wallet and get everyone else to expect
Allegedly.
Claire, let's have a look at the time, shall we? And teachers are voting to strike in February.
So was it Aristotle that said the roots of education are bitter, but the fruits are rich? Well, unfortunately, I don't think we're actually having that now, because I think everything is bittered. Post-pandemic, a lot of children are now not turning up to school because we see an increase in truancy. And, teachers now have to be social workers, they have to be educators, they have to be parents, they have to be lots of things instead of educators. And I think that's muddying the waters as well. Now, apparently, teachers have not had a pay increase relative to everyone else for the past 10 years or so. So they're now saying, well, look, we are doing all of these roles. Our roles are very difficult now. They've changed so much. Let's bring something to the table. Let's have negotiation, and let's us be paid for what we should be doing. But it's really unfortunate that we've had the rail strikes, we've got the issues with the NHS, and now education seems to be crippling us too. I mean, we need our future, we need the future of society to be able to grow, empirically grow. It's their fundamental right to have an education from primary to secondary to tertiary if they want. And this is somewhere where I disagree with Tony Blair, because I didn't think that it's everyone's right to go to university. There is plenty of, and ironically, his son is now a multi-millionaire due to the apprenticeship schemes that Ewan Blair has brought in, which is fantastic. But, come on, please, let's put value in our teachers, put value in education, put value in the future of our society and indeed our country, and educate them.
Children are the future.
Well, they are.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go. Who said that?
And
Michael Jackson.
It's one of those public sector issues, isn't it, where the low pay is driving people not to choose to go into the profession. So my son is a teacher at primary school, and that's still such a rare thing, a male teacher in a primary school. And I think it's right for kids should have role models of male and female.
Absolutely.
And that, for me, pay teachers a fair price, value education, like Claire said, and that's the biggest investment you can make in the future.
Okay, John, Claire, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. It is 8:48. We're going to talk about Prince